He flashed his lights and pulled her over with that look, a mix of smug confidence and quiet contempt. Officer Daniels had done this 100 times. A black woman behind the wheel of a brand new BMW alone in a neighborhood like this. To him, it was routine. Too routine. As he stepped out of the cruiser, he adjusted his belt and touched the brim of his hat, walking with the deliberate swagger of a man who believed he was in control before he even said a word. The woman had already rolled her window down, her face calm, her posture straight. No fear, no panic, just presence. He didn't like that. "License and registration," he said, flat and cold, not even bothering with a greeting. She didn't flinch. "Of course, officer," she replied, her voice even, polite. She reached into her glove compartment and handed over the documents. Daniels glanced at the license. "Monique Reynolds," he muttered, squinting at it like something didn't add up. Then with a smirk he looked at her. "Nice car, yours?" "Yes," she said simply. Daniels chuckled. "You must have had a hell of a promotion." He leaned on her door just a little too much, eyes scanning the interior. "This neighborhood isn't really the kind of place you'd just stumble into. Visiting someone?" Monique raised an eyebrow. "I know exactly where I am." That irritated him. There was no nervous stammer, no frantic explanation, just a quiet confidence that left no room for his authority games. He made a show of inspecting the paperwork. "You've got tinted windows. That's against regulation in this county." He was reaching now, scrambling for a reason to extend the stop. She didn't argue, just nodded. "I understand." Daniels clicked his tongue and stood up straight. "Sit tight," he said, already heading back to his cruiser with her license in hand. Inside the car, he muttered to himself, "Let's see who you really are." He typed her name into the system, waiting for the background report to load. It was taking longer than usual, and that alone annoyed him. Then the screen refreshed, and a photo popped up. The moment his eyes locked onto it, his expression froze. Monique Reynolds, Chief of Police, appointed last week. His fingers hovered above the keyboard, the blood drained from his face. It wasn't just that she outranked him. She was his boss. Technically, she was now in charge of the entire precinct, and that included him. He sat there for a moment, jaw tight, heart suddenly pounding. This wasn't supposed to happen. He was just flexing the badge like he always did, assuming she'd back down, apologize, explain herself. He glanced at her through the rearview mirror. She was still sitting in her car, hands resting on the wheel, expression unreadable. Not smug, not angry, just still. He hated that more than anything. Daniels wiped his palms on his pants, grabbed her ID and forced himself out of the car. The swagger was gone now. His steps were faster, tighter, like someone walking into a meeting they were unprepared for. When he reached the window, she turned to him with the same calm, steady gaze. "I ran your name," he said, voice low. "I figured you would," she replied. Daniels handed back her documents, not making eye contact. "You're free to go." But Monique didn't take the license. "Actually," she said slowly, "we need to talk." Daniels blinked. "Ma'am?" "I'll see you at headquarters tomorrow. 9 a.m., sharp." He opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She took her license and registration, placed them on the seat beside her, and without another word rolled up the window. Daniel stood there for a second, watching the taillights of the BMW disappear down the street. He didn't even realize he was holding his breath. He climbed back into the cruiser, sat there for a full minute, then slammed the door shut. Back at the station that evening, the air was thick. Whispers already moved through the halls. Someone had seen him on that stop. Someone had recognized her. Word traveled fast, especially when it involved someone like Daniels. He had a reputation, after all, tough on the street, not one to hold back. Never really worried about the right tone when it came to traffic stops, especially not with people he thought wouldn't push back. That was just how it worked, and it had worked for years. But this time, he'd picked the wrong woman. And tomorrow at 9 a.m., he'd have to face her. Not behind a car window, not with a badge between them, but in a conference room. On her terms. Whatever came next, Daniels knew, this wasn't going to be another routine day. "Before you go, Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss what happens next. This story is just getting started. The next morning, Officer Daniels arrived early, not because he was eager, but because he hadn't slept. His uniform was crisp, but the bags under his eyes betrayed the night he'd spent turning over every word, every look, every second of that stop. He replayed it 100 times. None of it looked good. He stood in front of the precinct mirror, adjusting his collar, practicing his tone. Should he apologize? Act like it was a misunderstanding? Blame the system? He didn't know what kind of chief she'd be, lenient or surgical. At 8:58 a.m., he stepped into the conference room. She was already there. Chief Monique Reynolds stood at the window, back turned, hands clasped behind her. Her uniform fit perfectly, no flash, no flare, just authority. Her presence filled the room before she even spoke. "Sit," she said without turning around. Daniels obeyed. She stayed silent for a few moments longer, as if deciding which version of herself she wanted him to meet today. Then she turned, walked to the head of the table, and took her seat. Her eyes locked on him. No anger, just sharp, unblinking focus. "Officer Daniels," she began, her tone neutral. "Yesterday, you conducted a traffic stop at 4:12 p.m. in the Fairgrove neighborhood." "Yes, Chief." She nodded. "I was the driver of that vehicle." Daniels cleared his throat. "Yes, Chief." There was a pause. Then she leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, what exactly made you decide to stop me?" He hesitated. "The window tint was, 'Let's not waste each other's time,'" she cut in. "You ran the stop like a man who already believed something before I even rolled the window down." Daniels swallowed hard. "Chief, She raised a hand, silencing him. "I've reviewed your record," she said. 15 commendations, 8 community complaints. Most never escalated. A few were quietly dismissed. You're efficient, I'll give you that, but your methods—" She tilted her head. "Questionable." He didn't respond. "I'm not here to embarrass you, Daniels. This isn't personal. But I need you to understand something very clearly." She stood and walked slowly around the table, stopping just behind him. "I didn't take this position to play politics. I'm not here for the photo ops or the promotion parties. I took this job because the system is bloated with officers who've mistaken instinct for bias, who've stopped challenging themselves to be better." She stepped forward again, back to her chair. "You assumed I didn't belong in that car, in that neighborhood. And when I didn't shrink, when I didn't give you what you expected, you got uncomfortable. That discomfort is your problem, Officer Daniels, not mine." Daniels sat frozen, shoulders tight. Monique opened a folder in front of her. "Here's what's going to happen," she said matter-of-factly. "You're being reassigned. Starting Monday, you'll be serving in the Community Engagement Division." Daniels blinked. "Chief, with all due respect." "No, Daniels," she cut in again, sharper now. "That's the problem. You've operated too long without understanding the people you're supposed to serve. That changes now." She closed the folder. "You'll report to Captain Harris. He'll expect full participation. Community meetings, youth outreach, face-to-face conversations. No patrols for 60 days. Daniels nodded slowly, his pride clearly wounded. But he wasn't dumb. He knew this could have gone far worse. She stood. "One more thing," she said as she headed for the door. "Next time you feel the urge to pull someone over, ask yourself, am I doing this because something feels wrong or because someone looks out of place? If you can't answer that with certainty, don't touch the lights." She left the room without another word. Daniels sat there for a long time. The clock ticked loud in the silence. He had faced internal reviews before, had dealt with angry citizens, written apologies, sat through diversity training sessions that felt like boxes to check. But this hit different. It wasn't just a reprimand. It was a mirror. And for the first time in years, Daniels didn't know what to do with what he saw. That week, his shift changed. No patrol car, no cruiser radio chatter, no stops. He found himself in church basements at public parks, in dusty community centers with creaky floors and folding chairs, listening, talking, not as the guy in charge, not as the man with the badge, but as part of the crowd. It was awkward at first. People knew his face, some avoided him, Others challenged him directly, but he showed up. Every time. He heard stories he'd never imagined. A single mother who got pulled over 5 times in 2 months, always for something vague. A teenage boy who walked home with his hood up and got cuffed before he even spoke. A grandfather who taught his grandson how to keep his hands visible during traffic stops before he even taught him how to drive. Daniels didn't argue. He just listened. One afternoon, after a particularly tense Q&A session at a local rec center, he stepped outside to clear his head. To his surprise, Chief Reynolds was there, leaning on her car, arms crossed. "Captain Harris told me you've been consistent," she said. "I'm learning," Daniels replied. She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "That's all I asked." He started to speak, but she stopped him again, this time gently. "You're not going to undo years in 60 days. But you're not beyond redemption either. You just have to want it." Daniels looked away, then back at her. "I didn't see it before," he admitted. "I thought I knew people. Turns out I barely knew myself." She gave a small, approving nod, then pushed off the car. "You want back on the streets?" she asked. He paused, then answered honestly, "Eventually, but not until I know I deserve to be out there." Monique held his gaze. For the first time she smiled, just a little. "Good," she said. "Then there's hope for you yet." She got in her car and drove off, leaving him on the curb, watching her taillights disappear. Not in shame this time, but with something else. Something slower to build. Something real. Respect. Thanks for watching. If this story hit you, inspired you, or made you think, go ahead and subscribe. There's more coming.